Fracking founder and executive director of Power the Future, Daniel Turner. Daniel, good to see you.
Thanks for having me on.
All right, Daniel, this is very interesting. So Bernie Sanders brought up fracking in the Democrat debate in Las Vegas just a couple days ago. And I feel like fracking has become somewhat of a point to, or that's what Democrats point to when they're talking about climate change. But if you actually look at the process of fracking, if you look at the impacts that it has on our environment, and especially in comparison to what we were using for energy before we were using the natural gas that is begot from fracking, it doesn't seem to me that fracking deserves being demonized in this way.
No, and I think there are so many misconceptions about fracking. First of all, how long we've been doing it. Fracking was discovered kind of accidentally during the Civil War, and it was commercialized in the 20s and 30s. We've been fracking in America for almost 100 years. It's just in the last 10 or so, with horizontal drilling, with new technologies, that we've gotten really, really good at it. But we've been fracking for a long time. There are right now active in America about 2 million fracked wells. If it was this huge problem that people like Senator Sanders and Senator Warren talk about, we would be seeing some of these problems with 2 million wells. There are 4.5 million fracked wells that are no longer operational, right? So fracking is a lot more common and is a lot safer and a lot older than people give it credit.
Right, so that's the first interesting fact, that it's not new. Democrats would like you to think it's new, just maybe if you're not as familiar with it as you might want to be. They want you to think it's something it's not. The second thing is the impacts of fracking since, say the year 2000. Take an arbitrary, a round number like that. Fracking has reduced CO2 emissions in our country, more CO2 emissions in our country than the Paris Climate Accords has. This fracking is responsible for, I believe it's 140 million tons. That's how much our emissions have fallen since the year 2000, thanks to fracking. Why do these so-called environmentalists ignore that?
And that was really disappointing, unexpected, right? Or not surprising, but disappointing that such great numbers like that, the amount of emissions that we're reducing in our country, the better impact we're having on the environment in our country, that's something that the left should celebrate. These people running for president should celebrate. People like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez should celebrate, but they don't. They just stay mum on it. So you're absolutely right. Fracking has been a tremendous boon to the environment. It's reduced our emissions. It's also created millions of jobs in our country. And what energy does when energy is abundant is that it lowers the cost of all goods and services. So our electric bills are lower. Everything we transport, we grow, we manufacture, the prices come down. And just think of that in your own personal life. If your heating bill every month, if your electric bill every month is what they pay in Europe, which would be 3 and 4 times what we pay in America, well, that extra money that you have to pay to the power company, you're not going out to eat, you're not spending it at the movies, you're not buying things, and it hurts the economy as a whole. So fracking isn't just important for the environment, fracking is vital to our economy, and it is flabbergasting that there are people running for president who not only don't see that, but want to ban it as a practice.
Right, and conversely, looking to what happens to jobs and energy prices if we were to ban fracking, that's even more startling. So there's a U.S. Chamber of Commerce study that they conducted that found that banning fracking would eliminate jobs for 14 million Americans. 14 million Americans would lose their jobs if fracking were banned. And in regards to energy prices, if fracking were banned, this is the really interesting thing too, because the Democrats portray it as though we ban fracking, we save the planet, right? This is what would happen. Energy prices would go up, and if energy prices go up, what happens? Then we increase our dependence on foreign oil. When we're buying foreign oil, the nations from whom we purchase this oil, they're not environmentally friendly. They don't have the regulations that we have in the United States. They don't have this sort of moral idea that we should be good stewards of the environment. We would actually, by banning fracking, be causing not only people's lives to be more difficult because energy prices would be going up, but we'd be causing more damage to our planet because we'd be dependent on oil from countries who don't care about the planet.
Exactly. And you're a patriot, I'm a patriot. America is incredible, right? Because not only do we produce more oil and gas than the rest of the world, but we do it more responsibly, more ethically, with more attention placed on the environment. Isn't that something we should think is pretty incredible? Don't you think people running for president should say, These are some great things about our country that we do. And the point you just made is absolutely right. In other countries, in the Middle East, in Venezuela, they don't have the environmental regulations. They don't have an EPA. They don't have the tremendous amount of oversight that these industries have in America. So we have to get rid of this myth that fossil fuels are somehow bad. They did this, and by they I mean the environmental left, did this for years to the coal industry, right? And they destroyed towns all across America, in Appalachia, Ohio, Pennsylvania, in New Mexico. They targeted coal because they told us coal was bad. Now they're targeting fracking. What's going to be next, right? This is the process of the environmental left. It's not about the climate change. It's not about the earth. It is about power. And this is how the Green New Deal, this is how leftists will seize power.
Oh, definitely, because the Green New Deal, I've said this before, it's socialism and communism wrapped up in green leaves to disguise it. The one last thing that I want to address before we run out of time here is I want to address the fact that there are issues. There are environmental issues or challenges with fracking. We shouldn't ignore that. There certainly is. There's wastewater management issues. There's methane migration issues. There's contamination issues. And I want you, Daniel, if you would, to address each of these things, because there's a very interesting study that was done at the University of Texas at Arlington about contamination that happens due to fracking that says this study found that it's not the process of fracking itself, the drilling or the wells that causes this contamination. It's actually the operational inefficiency. It's essentially sloppy drilling with inefficient machines that's causing the contamination, not anything that's happening to the earth. Can you speak to that?
Absolutely. And companies who are irresponsible or who cut corners should be held accountable. And I'm not going to say fracking is perfect. It's not. But there is no perfect environmental solution. And the people who want to say move us to a green technology, green is not by any means perfect either. And we can have a whole show on the problems with green technologies. So absolutely, fracking does have some issues. Oklahoma has an increase in seismic activity. Interesting that Oklahoma does. North Dakota doesn't. Texas doesn't. Alaska doesn't. Well, Alaska has always had seismic activity because it's Alaska. So there is an issue in Oklahoma, right? Maybe Oklahoma should find another, go back to coal, find another solution for that state, right? So absolutely, there are going to be problems with this. There are going to be problems with every industry. But when you take those problems and you compare it to the good that it produces in terms of jobs, in terms of environmental stewardship, and in terms of quality of life for the average country, fracking is by far one of the best solutions and technologies we have.
Right. And when there's a challenge in an industry, it's an insane proposition to completely obliterate that industry instead of trying to obliterate and solve the challenge within that industry. And that's the difference between the right and the left here. Daniel, I appreciate your knowledge on this issue. Thanks for being on the show.